this video, we're going to be going over painting the Dothraki skin tone as well as a red horse. So to start out with the red horse, we've got a mix of black, then scale 7/5 fantasy colors, Tindalos red mixed with, what was it? Bosch chestnut, I think is what the brown is called. Yeah, Bosch chestnut. Sorry about that. I'll need to do a better job of tracking the names of these paints in future videos, so just bear with me today for this one. But we're taking all those paints and mixing them as at a 1-to-1 ratio, 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, and we're just going to base coat the horse. When we think about painting red horses, they come in a lot of different varieties, surprisingly enough. Uh, it doesn't seem like it's very common that you find these really bright red horses, and when we're talking bright red, we're not saying that there's Clifford the big red dog walking out there kind of horse, but they do have a more red hue to them, so they kind of look like how someone with red hair might, or like a human with red hair might look. But they still have a lot of these brown undertones to them, and when you get up to their highlights, they're not so much red, they're more reddish orange. So we're going to start with the brownish red base coat on this one, and we're going to be working up to the reddish brown with the Tindalos mix, or the Tindalos and Bosch chestnut mix. So cover your horse with all this paint. You definitely don't. I think it's quite common for me to film these videos while using the scale 7/5 fantasy line, and that's really because I have the set, so it's easy for me to just kind of grab the color that I want to and make them work the way that I want to. But I am a pluralistic painter in terms of the brands that I choose. I mean, Chimera makes some really awesome paint. I use a bunch of oil paint in some of my stuff. Vallejo is one of my all-time favorite companies, and even Games Workshop or Citadel makes some pretty cool stuff. I kind of just adhere to mostly their base paints because I think they're the strongest pigmented and have the most covering power. But now that we've covered our whole horse in the brownish, blackish red mix, we're going to remove the black from the mixture that we did, and we're going to paint in the bulk of the muscles for the horse. Now, I don't know why, but I absolutely hate painting cavalry. It just, something about it feels so tedious, and I feel like I'm being cheated into painting two models when I really only want to paint one. It's just a weird hang up for me. I don't know what the deal is, because cav armies are usually a lot smaller than the big massive armies, and I should like that about it, but I just don't for some reason. So the way that we're painting this model is we're kind of using like a weird mix between glazing and layering because my paint isn't thinned down super, super thin. I would say it's maybe 2-to-1 for thinning, and that makes it so that the paint is a little on the opaque side, but not so much to where we're not going to be able to get any of that color to kind of shine through. So we put that first coat of highlights on, and we're just going to go back and kind of reestablish some of those to get that. You can kind of see it's taking shape now, watching that reddish orange kind of pop through on the muscle structure on the horse. Now, the reason why I call this kind of pseudo glazing too is because we're not taking the paint and dragging it across the model to deposit a small amount on the highlighted area. It really is kind of I think it's kind of just become my painting style in general, where I like this weird glazing layering mix. So on the opposite side of the horse that I've started on, this already had kind of most of the highlights built up on it. So we're just coming in with a third final coat of this Tindalos red mixed with Bosch chestnut. And that's going to give us this really nice reddish brown tone. So I know that it's really looking like we're painting a brown horse, but as we get closer to finishing out these highlights, we're going to end up with some of those more orangey red parts where the light's going to catch a lot of the reflection on the muscles. So again, on the other side of the horse, we're taking care of the third highlight on this side with that mix as well. It doesn't look like I had done as much as I wanted to. No, maybe I did. So now we're coming in, and I didn't want to go straight red with this one. Like I had said earlier, I wanted to still keep those brown properties, but just not make it look super duper cartoony. So I think the orange that we ended up using I want to say it's Tiamat orange. If you slow down the video, you might be able to see the paint color better than I can, but we're putting that orange into our original uh, Tindalos red and Bosch chestnut mix, and that's going to give us kind of more of that red horse look instead of just a brown horse or a brown horse. So we're just going over the highest peaks of the muscles on the horse right now to get those highlights on there. I think I might do 2 or 3 coats for highlights. One of my biggest struggles as a painter is I feel like I over highlight a model, and it's really easy to do, especially when you're painting like this, and it's almost like there's a critical point where once you hit that it's too much. But I think overall we did pretty good here. I ended up doing the rest of the horse off camera just to kind of bash through it, and this is roughly what your horse should look like. For the tail and the mane, we're going with black. I think that they kind of waffle between a couple different colors. I think when it comes to a horse, there's really no like particular way to do it. I know there's special breeds of horses that kind of only really come in one color, for the most part at least, or just various hues of that color, but we're just kind of going for a base horse. So whatever you do to it, you really, I don't think, can go wrong as long as you're painting in natural colors. So we'll use the black to get the hooves, the tail, and the mane on this one. And then I think once we're done, we end up highlighting black with one of my favorite colors to paint black with. And that's, it's from Vallejo Game Color, but it's, sometimes when you buy it, it's called Shadow Gray, and sometimes it's called Somber Gray. Those two I don't believe are different paints, and if they are, they've got to be different by only like a small hue. But I think you could also do the horse, the hair on the horse here, as like a sandy brown, up to like maybe like a bony ivory color. That would look fine too. So here's that dry brushing. I could go through and highlight each individual strand of hair, but I think dry brushing kind of gives you a little bit more chaotic, natural look when you're doing hair, instead of a more like, not fake look, but it just looks really stylized. Plus, as I said earlier, I hate painting cavalry, so I just want to get it done, so I'm not going to spend time highlighting every strand of hair on this horse. The last bit that I'm going to end up doing on this horse is something that I see every now and again that really adds a lot of character to the horse, and that's these, I don't know what they're, I'm sure that people out there in the horse world could have names for this stuff, but they're basically just patches of hair that are not the color that the main body of the horse is. So with this one, we're hitting up a pretty classic look on these brownish red horses and doing kind of the white stripe down their face. And then we're going to be doing just kind of like the tips of their legs, not really their hooves, but their legs are going to be done with a little bit of white on them too. And you don't need to be extremely accurate with these or make them super symmetrical. Like sometimes they might only have one foot that looks like this or one leg that looks like this. I know it's hard for me coming from my art background to not do things symmetrically because I basically had to, or else things would be weird. But with this one, I try to play a little bit more loose and make some of these areas a little shorter than others and some a little bit longer. Now you'll see I kind of jab the side of the horse with my white paint here, and normally this would be a problem that I think some people would freak out about and feel like they need to repaint the whole horse. But all you need to do is take a dry brush, load it up with water, and then just keep swishing it into that white paint or whatever paint you got on your model, and then take another dry brush and just soak it up, and then boom, you've got a clean model again. So that'll help you get out of some like unfortunate situations. So the other thing about this, I'm coming back in and reestablishing the white, since it's kind of hard to paint over the color that I've got here with just the white that I've used. One of the things that I could have done here differently that you're more than welcome to do is I could have started out with maybe like the more like bluish gray to start these and then build up that white highlight, just so that there could be some shadows on there. But with this model, I'm pretty fine with making sure that the white is super duper stark, so I'm not looking at highlighting any of that. But feel free to do what you'd like here. One of the things I don't appreciate doing with these stripes is, or these fur markings, is I don't like to blend them into the hair color because it seems like they are just like a patch of a color and they're not really blended in or anything. But we've already started on the skin tone for our Dothraki Screamer, and for this one, I ended up grabbing the Scale 7.5 Fantasy color called Shrapnel Red, and this is kind of a more reddish brown. One of the hardest things about painting skin tones that aren't your own is if you're not exposed to them often in your daily life. Like, you don't work around someone who has this skin tone or watch a bunch of media that has people that have this skin tone. It can be really difficult to figure out the nuances of how to shade that skin tone and how to exaggerate it properly with the highlights without making it look weird. So one of the best things to do for painting these skin tones that aren't your own is to watch makeup tutorials for people that do have that skin tone. So for this one, I was kind of aiming for more of this like uh, South, like probably more like Middle Eastern skin tone is probably the best way I could explain it. So I watched a bunch of makeup tutorials for or from Indian women who were doing, who were trying to, because they're basically doing the same thing we are. They need to accentuate their highlights or exaggerate their highlights to show their, to enhance, or not enhance, but like to call out some of the features that they're trying to bring attention to, and then they want to exaggerate the shadows quite a bit to do the same thing we do in painting. We want our details to pop. So with the highlight on this one, I went with, I think it's a mix between Shrapnel Red and Kokum Copper. And the reason why I've skipped around on the browns a little bit is because I want, again, the transition between that base color and my highlights to be a little bit more natural. So in order to do that, you can mix these two colors, or you take your original base coat that you put down and then you mix your highlight into it, and then that makes the transition to your highlight a little bit less of a big jump. So your transitions are a little bit more smooth. And you can see that we've done a good job of kind of eliminating that stark reddish brown, and we're kind of getting more towards that orange color. And this is, I believe this is just the Kokum Copper that's going on, just straight Kokum Copper. No, that can't be. That color looks like it's a little too off for that. We might have started a little bit darker than that Shrapnel Red. I can't quite remember. But, yeah, everything in here doesn't look like... I guess I might be getting closer to highlighting with that Kokum Copper now, but we're kind of heading towards those yellowish browns, but I still want to maintain that red tone, so we probably have some of our previous tones still, or previous colors still mixed into this one, and we're just trying to highlight up without making this look too dark. Because I think my mistake with painting this Dothraki Screamer is that I definitely started a little too deep on the colors for this one, because I think that when it comes to painting a miniature, you don't have as much room for building up these highlights. I know that this guy's real muscle bound and has a lot of surface area that we can cover up to make these highlights progress well for us. But I don't want to get, like, I'm not trying to paint this thing to display it somewhere. I'm trying to paint it so that it looks decent when I'm playing with it on the table. So I feel like at some point I'm kind of again, as I had mentioned earlier, over highlighting this model. And it really comes down to me starting way too dark for what I was actually looking for. I kind of wanted to end up with this more, like, I think Vallejo Game Color makes a perfect color for this. It's called Leather Brown. That's kind of the color that I wanted to build up to. And now I'm recognizing on the brush, this is straight Kokum Copper. And this is kind of the color that I wanted to naturally build up to. But I feel like it took me a really long time to get here. And that the way that it's highlighted, it's just got too much of a dark red shadow to it, to where it looks like this Dothraki has been sitting in the sun for a very, very long time, which is fine because I don't need all of my Screamers to have the same exact skin tone. I think that one of the lazy parts of painting is that when you're painting an army or a unit, you get really like complacent with the skin tone and don't want to vary it so much. So at least with this one, I'll be able to have a little bit of a mix of different skin tones that are in my army. But I really wish I would have went a little bit brighter on this one, especially since we're kind of getting really close to, not that we're going to get close to, but we're kind of close to what the horse's fur color is. So I'm trying to get away from that to make this this rider kind of stand out a little bit more. And again, we're just hitting the edges with that kokum copper. We're not trying to over highlight anything. I think I come in one last time with one more hit of the kokum copper. I think it's, in general, it doesn't look terrible. I think it might even be, we might have even lifted this up just a little bit to Scale 7.5's next up color on that brown track is called Peanut Butter. And I believe that's what we ended up using on this final highlight. Now, maybe you caught that color name a little bit quicker than I did, but again, bear with me on the naming conventions of my paints here. I just I'll try and get better, I promise. But now you can see we're really standing out, and this is where I think I've hit that point where I might have over highlighted the model, where I've got this really, really bright, stark color that kind of just contrasts a little bit too much with the original skin tone base color that I started with. Now, you can see the muscle structure standing out really well on this guy because the highlights are so bright and the shadows are so dark. But I think overall I'm okay with what's going on here. It's just not something that I think I'll want to reproduce anytime soon on the unit. Maybe I'll do one guy from every unit like this, but I'm not. This was more of an accident thing than it was something that I was aiming for. But you'll see next, I kind of fast forward through, well, not fast forward, I just skip all the painting for like the leathers on him and stuff, because it really is just whatever flavor of brown or ivory you want to paint things or wash them or dry brush them with. But you can kind of, at least I've hoped that this helped you get over the hump of painting the skin tone and the red horse. If you have any requests for things that you would like to see painted, leave them in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do so now. And while you're at it, you can hit that notification bell, because I often process my videos overnight, and this will let you know when I've posted them, especially if you're an overseas person. The notification might work better for you than when I get around to posting on my Facebook page and the other random Facebook pages for Ice and Fire. But I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial and it gave you some direction on painting your Dothraki if you happen to be stuck with them. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next one.